I've been talking about the future self philosophy, all year because I think it's a more empowering way to go about creating transformation. Just focusing on weight loss or, dieting and all that stuff, it's just not empowering. It just leads to too much pain and suffering because when you end up trying to do too much too soon, things are going to happen. It's impossible to maintain. All right, thanks for joining me for another episode of The Best You've Ever Been. Hope you're doing great, and it's quickly approaching summertime. Can you imagine? Yes, it's quickly approaching summertime. So guys, all of this year we've been talking about creating a future vision of yourself. What it is that you want to accomplish this year. Who are you becoming? Who is that person that you're becoming? Who is that future self that you're creating? We've been talking a lot about your future self because this is important. And this is the work I do with my clients. A lot of people are trying to lose weight. And one of the biggest reasons why people get trapped or people get stuck in what I call the weight loss trap is because, they focus so much on weight loss. And it's just not motivating. Because when you focus just on weight loss, you go through a lot of struggles and you put yourself through a lot of unnecessary suffering. So how do we get around that? We get around that by using a bit of imagination and coming up with what I call your future vision. What is your future vision? What do you see a year down the road, 5 years down the road? And the problem with a lot of people is they can't really, when they look down the road, they can't really imagine anything significantly different from what they've got today. They can't imagine their bodies being significantly different from what it is today. And that's the problem. So lack of imagination is one of the problems, right? So you've got to be able to dream again, folks. So today, let's talk about the role of your imagination in your success. Right? Your imagination. You've got to be able to dream. You've got to be able to look down the road and visualize or see what's possible. And that's one of the first things that I do with my coaching clients. It's like I get them dreaming again. Well, what's possible? You're kind of stuck in what was and what has been. And for a lot of people, I said I help them to lose the emotional pounds because they're dealing with a lot of unresolved emotional issues. That is one of the reasons why they can't see anything different down the road because they're stuck in this emotional cycle of being controlled by unresolved emotional issues. So learning to use your imagination, learning to dream again, learning to look down the road, look into the future and ask yourself, well, what is possible? What is it you want? And here's a little secret, folks. When you dream, you might as well dream big. When you imagine what's possible, you might as well let your imagination serve you because for crying out loud, the brain can't tell the difference between what is reality and what is imagination, right? So you put a picture in your brain and your brain really can't tell the difference between what you are imagining and what's real. And we know that for a fact because they've done brain imagery around these kinds of things. A lot of research support this. So when you're dreaming or when you're using your imagination, you are reprogramming your brain. You're rewiring your brain to help you achieve what it is that you want. And that is a very big deal. Because to achieve anything, well, you've got to reprogram your brain to create the habits that will help you to move towards that future self you're creating. So how do you go about using your imagination? Well, first you got to come up with, who do you see when you look down the road? A year from now, who are you? Who have you become? Who's that person that you're becoming? What is that future self that you're creating? Can you paint a clear picture of who that person is? Do you know who that person is? Can you look at your body and just imagine, what is it that you want? Right? Stand naked in front of a full-length mirror and just look at yourself and be okay with where you are, because the first stage is acceptance, right? The first stage in the process of change is acceptance. You've got to be able to accept where you are. You don't have to like where you are, but first you must accept where you are as what is, because to fight against reality is madness, right? You can't fight against reality. This is what is what is. You don't have to like it, but first you have to accept that this is what is before you can go about the process of changing it. So stand in front of a full-length mirror naked and just look at yourself. Now, don't criticize yourself. That's your body. That's who you are right now. That's what you've got. That is what you have created to date. What you've done in the past year, this is the result of what you've done in the past year. So the body you have is the body you have created, whether consciously or unconsciously. It's what you've got, right? This is what you've created. This is what your habits have created. So now think down the future, a year from now, or just the end of this year. What is it that you want? How do you look? How do you look at the end of the year? It's January 1st, 2024. How do you look? Right? What do you want to see happen? Do you want to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds? Do you want to have a flat stomach? Or do you want to, reduce that belly, gentlemen? Do you want to reduce your belt size? Ladies, do you want to get down to a lower dress size? Or do you just love your body the way you are and you just want to get stronger, you want to get fitter, you want to get healthy, whatever it is? You need to be able to imagine what it is. You need to be able to see where you're going before you will know how to get there. If you're taking a trip, by golly, you don't just go buy a ticket, any ticket to go anywhere. You know where you're going, right? You think, okay, well, I'm going to New York. Well, I'm going to go buy a ticket to New York. Where in New York? Well, New York City. I'm going to buy a ticket to New York City. I wouldn't buy a ticket to upstate New York. Well, it's not going to take me to New York City. So where are you going? What is it you want? You've got to be able to see that before you can program your brain to help you get there. And the way your brain helps you to get there is by helping you to create and maintain the habits necessary to get there. Otherwise, you probably won't, because you'll be acting from your old habits, right? You'll be acting from the habits of your current self. In order to get where you're going, well, we're going to need to develop some new habits. Those are the habits of your future self. You a year from now, or you the end of the year. You are a very different person a year from now. If you want to create change, then you will be a very different person. You will need to become a different person, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That is the process of creating change. That is the process of creating your future self. But it all starts with the imagination, guys. It all starts with learning to dream again. Learning to look down the road and imagine what is possible. What do I want? I call that creating a future vision of yourself. And it's another way of saying, what is the future self that you're creating? You need to be able to sit down and paint a clear, vivid picture of where you're going. And that's one of the first things I have my coaching clients do. We sit down and we paint a very clear picture of what is it they want, so that The next step is, well, how do you get there? Well, what is it going to take to get there? What are the habits to get there? And when you get there, how do you maintain the results you get when you get there? Well, we need some other guardrail habits, right? In order to prevent ourselves from sliding back to where we began. That is one of the reasons why most people who lose weight regain it and more. They don't have guardrail habits set up to catch themselves when they're slipping. So they gained the first 5 pounds and they didn't catch themselves. So 5 become 10. 10 becomes 20, 20 becomes 30, 30 becomes 40. Before you know it, they are right back where they began. And you don't want that. And there's an easy process. I teach my clients how to prevent that. Because what's the point of going through, all the work it takes to change your body, to change your life, to create new habits, to develop a new lifestyle? What is the point of just allowing yourself to slip back into the old habits? And believe me, it can happen, right? It does happen. And it does happen because you're not paying attention. When you take your eyes off the ball and you don't have habits set up to catch yourself when you're slipping, that is what happens, because life happens and things get in the way. But even when life happens, life will always happen, right? Things are always going to come up. It's just life. You're going to go through crises after crises, but how do you prevent yourself from slipping? How do you catch yourself when you're slipping so you prevent the big slide? Things are going to happen. That is very important. So these are all the habits we work on. I call them non-negotiable habits, guardrail habits. These are all the habits of your future self. And I've been talking about the future self philosophy, all year, because I think it's a more empowering way to go about creating transformation. Just focusing on weight loss or, dieting and all that stuff, it's just not empowering. It just leads to too much pain and suffering, because when you end up trying to do too much too soon, things are going to happen. It's impossible to maintain, diets. Because you try to do too many things too soon. You try to change too many habits too soon. And it's impossible to maintain them because your brain is going to start working against you. Your brain is going to start working against you. And that is what a lot of people don't realize, is that, habits are creating in your brain, and your brain controls your habits. Therefore, to maintain habits, you've got to learn how to work with the brain. You've got to learn how to rewire the brain to change the pathways in the brain to help you. And the only way to do that is by making small changes over time instead of trying to change dozens of habits at the same time. So, these are all the things we've been talking about. Now, I haven't said anything new here today. These are the things I've been talking about all year. And hopefully, if you go back to some of the earlier episodes this year, you'll see that we've talked a lot about creating your future self. We've talked a lot about, creating a future vision of yourself. We've talked a lot about some of the non-negotiable habits of your future self, some of the guardrail habits of your future self. Because these are the things you need to practice in order to not just get great results, but to sustain the results that you get over time. And if you don't practice the habits of your future self, if you don't master the habits of your future self, it is virtually impossible to maintain the results, the lifestyle that you're creating over the long term. It will just be a short-term fix, and you don't want that. You don't want to do all this work just to revert back to where you started. I mean, what's the point? It is not at all that difficult to do what you need to do to maintain the results that you get. Okay, guys? But where we start is we start with using your imagination. And again, thinking about, what is it that you're creating? What is that future vision? What is it you see? And you need to revisit this often. I bring this up now because you need to revisit this often. I do this every week with my coaching clients. So you revisit, what is that future vision? What are you creating? Where are you? You know, how far have we come? What have we accomplished so far? What are your weekly wins? What are those little wins? We strive for little wins because those little wins add up to become a big win, right? I call it habits compound. We practice making small changes to habits, and it has a compounding effect over time. That's why we do small changes, because it is easier to maintain small changes. So, the assignment for you is, how can you use your imagination to create something different by the end of this year? Who are you becoming? Just create that future vision. Just sit down and visualize. Who are you becoming? What do you want? Who are you at the end of the year? How is your life different? How is your personal life different? You can extrapolate this to work. How is your work life different? How is your relationship? How are your relationships different? So you see, you can take this in a lot of different areas. But if you want to focus just on your physical health and well-being, well, not just the physical, because there's no such thing as just the physical. To get results that last, we need to focus on the physical, the mental, emotional, and the spiritual, because they all work together. Just to focus on the physical, which is what diets do. That's what most people do. That's what most people have done in the past. That's the old way of doing things, just focusing on the physical. Diet and exercise, and realize that, oh my God, I've been doing this diet and exercise thing, and here I am, right back where I started. Well, because guess what? Your actions are controlled by your emotions. We're emotional creatures. The reason why we eat, why? Emotions. So I usually deal with my clients to lose the emotional pounds, because that's what they are. Our actions are controlled by emotions. You know, when life gets heavy, well, we usually turn to food, right? And so we need to focus on the emotions. And guess what? Guess what controls those emotions? Yes, our thoughts. So you see, the way we think control our emotions, and emotion controls our actions. Our actions get us results. There's a process, guys. And at the top of it all, guess what? All this happens in the brain. So we need to learn how to work with the brain. It can't be just about diet and exercise. And that's the message I've been trying to get across to you all along. It can't be just about diet and exercise. Diet and exercise alone won't get you to where you want to go over the long term. You get some short-term results, but it won't get you where you want to go over the long term. You won't be able to maintain the results you get. You can get results by going on a diet and, start exercising. You can get results, but you won't be able to maintain those results unless you focus on the mental and emotional as well. Because we are emotional creatures, and we primarily eat for emotional reasons. If you take a look at all the reasons why you eat, you'll find out that a lot of times you eat is not about physical hunger, which is why we should be eating. There's a lot of emotional eating going on a daily basis. Okay? All right, guys, that's all I've got for you. Check out the show notes for all the resources. My new webinars and training. The links are in the show notes. You can get a free one-on-one call with me, a coaching call. It's not a sales call, it's a coaching call. We sit and we talk about what is it you want. If you want to talk about how to use your imagination, how to come up with what is that future vision that you want to create, that's what I do with a lot of people who call me, because, like I said, a lot of people have a problem seeing anything differently a year from now than what it is today. It's very hard for a lot of people to see themselves as different a year or 5 years from now. So I work with them to create that future vision and to come up with, well, what is that future self that you want to create? So, sign up for free one-on-one conversation, and I will help you to get there, okay? Hope you're doing great. And as usual, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Talk soon.